After my daughter-in-law threw out my gift, my grandson found the $2,300 receipt hidden inside. She laughed when she saw the old violin case. Not a loud laugh. Just sharp enough for my grandson to hear. "Your grandpa is cheap," she said. "He dug that junk out of a basement." I stood there with my hands empty. My son looked away. My grandson looked embarrassed. And I said nothing, because no grandfather wants to ruin a child's birthday. Later, she pushed the case into the donation pile like it was trash. But my grandson pulled it back. He opened the torn lining, saw my name, my payment, and the note I hid inside. "Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. If you are watching late, please drink some water and take care of yourself." My daughter-in-law thought she had thrown away an old case. She did not know my grandson had just opened the one thing she never wanted him to read. My name is Neil Carver. I was 62 years old when I learned that some people do not throw away old things because they are worthless. They throw them away because old things remember too much. I live outside Burlington, Vermont, close enough to the Canadian border that winter always feels like it has dual citizenship. My mother, Mara Carver, was born in Nova Scotia. She came down to Vermont with 2 suitcases, 1 photograph, and a fiddle case that had more scratches than shine. She used to play in community halls when I was a boy. Nothing fancy, no spotlight, just folding chairs, church coffee, old men tapping their boots, and women humming along while the snow piled up outside. That fiddle was the first voice I trusted. Before I understood money, status, or family pride, I understood the sound of old wood under my mother's chin. She would tell me, "Neil, new things impress people. Old things tell the truth." I carried that sentence longer than I carried most jobs. For more than 35 years, I worked as a school music repair technician. That sounds small if you have never watched a child cry over a broken violin the week before a concert. I fixed cracked bridges, loose pegs, bent keys, snapped strings, dented trumpets, tired bows, and clarinets that squeaked like angry birds. I worked in storage rooms, band halls, and school basements where the heat never worked right. I was not rich. I never pretended to be, but I knew how to make an old instrument sing again. After I retired, I still did repair work part-time. Teachers called when budgets ran thin. Parents called when rental fees got ugly. Sometimes I fixed a student instrument for less than I should have, because I knew what it felt like when a child wanted music and the adults only saw the bill. My wife, Renee, understood that. She was a library assistant and sang in our community choir. She believed music and books did the same holy work. They gave quiet people somewhere to put their feelings. Renee used to say, "A child does not need a perfect instrument. He needs one adult who believes the first ugly note is worth hearing." When our grandson Benji was little, he liked sitting on the rug while I changed strings. He never touched anything without asking. That was his way. Careful, curious, a little shy until he forgot to be. One afternoon, he pointed at my mother's old fiddle case and asked, "Grandpa, why does that one look so tired?" I told him, "Because it survived." He thought about that for a long time. Then he said, "Can tired things still make music?" I smiled. If someone is patient enough. That boy remembered more than people gave him credit for. By 12, Benji was not some prodigy. He was just a kid with a good ear and a soft heart. He noticed background music in stores. He tapped rhythms on the kitchen table. He once told me old violins sounded like they were remembering things. That was when I started thinking about my mother's fiddle again. It had been sitting in its case for years. The bridge was bad. The bow needed re-hairing. The case lining was torn. The latch barely held. To most people, it looked like junk. To me, it was Mara's voice. And I wanted Benji to have the chance to hear it before the world taught him that only shiny things mattered. I also had another dream, a small one. I wanted to start something called The Maple Bridge Instrument Fund. Nothing grand. Just a little repair fund for kids whose families could not afford bow hair, new strings, case repair, or a few months of lessons. Renee had loved that idea. She said, "Old instruments deserve a second student." After she passed, I put the idea away. Grief does that. It shelves good plans beside things you are not ready to touch. Then Benji started growing up, and I realized if I waited too long, the people around him might teach him to be ashamed of the very things that could have held him steady. So I took my mother's fiddle out of the closet. I wiped the dust from the case, and I decided to restore it for him. To Marissa, that old case looked like basement junk. To me, it was the last piece of my mother's voice I could still place in my grandson's hands. Marissa Carver did not hate old things loudly at first. That was what made her dangerous. Loud people warn you. Quiet contempt sits at the table, smiles politely, and waits for everyone else to call it good manners. Marissa was 39, sharp, organized, and always dressed like she had a meeting with someone more important later. She worked as a private school admissions consultant and parenting image coach. That meant she knew how to turn a child's life into a brochure. The right activities, the right photos, the right volunteer hours, the right story about discipline, leadership, culture, and upward movement. She used phrases like future-facing, profile building, and intentional parenting. I understood some of it. The world had become expensive, competitive, tense. In 2026, parents were paying for tutoring, camps, sports, music, travel teams, and admissions advice like childhood itself had turned into a business plan. But Marissa did not just want Benji to have opportunities. She wanted his life to look untouched by anything worn, working class, homemade, or old. That included me. At first, she was careful. If I brought over a repaired bookshelf, she would say, "That's sweet, Neil, very sentimental." If I mentioned my mother's fiddle, she would smile and answer, "Old family hobbies are charming, but Benji needs things that build applications." If Benji asked about Nova Scotia, she would redirect him toward homework, tennis clinic, or some leadership workshop with a glossy flyer. She never said, "Your family embarrasses me." She said, "Cleaner things. We're trying to give Benji more than a small-town identity." That was how people like Marissa cut you. They use polished words so the blood looks like your fault. My son Dustin heard those comments too. He was 38, a regional grocery logistics supervisor, and a good man in the tired way many good men become when peace at home starts costing them honesty. He loved me. I know he did. But love without a spine becomes a witness, not a shield. One Sunday, I mentioned that Benji had asked about the fiddle again. Dustin rubbed his forehead and said, "Dad, maybe Benji doesn't need old family stuff pushed on him." Pushed. That word stayed with me. I had not pushed anything. I had only held a door open. Marissa, sitting across from us with her coffee untouched, gave a small nod. "That's all I'm saying," she said. "A scratched-up violin case is not a future. It's a reminder of everything we're trying to rise above." There it was. Not the full cruelty yet, but the shape of it. I looked at Dustin, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He looked down at his plate. That hurt more than Marissa's sentence. Because a stranger can misunderstand where you come from. A son knows the road and still chooses not to describe it. Benji was in the next room that day, building something with a deck of cards and 2 empty cereal boxes. I could hear him humming under his breath. Not a song exactly, just a little pattern of sound, rising and falling like he was trying to find where it belonged. He had music in him, not performance music, not resume music, real music. The kind a child makes before adults start grading it. Marissa heard it too. She called out, "Benji, don't forget your prep packet. You have the seminar sample questions." He stopped humming. Just like that. The house felt quieter. That was when I first noticed the brochure on the kitchen counter. Elite Summer Admissions Prep. 4 weekends. Interview coaching. Personal statement development. Leadership profile review. The dates were printed in neat blue ink. One of them matched the beginner lesson schedule I had been discussing with Ada Mills at Maple Bridge Strings. I picked up the brochure. Marissa noticed immediately. "Oh," she said, reaching for it. "That's just something we're considering." "For Benji?" "Of course. He asked about learning fiddle." She laughed softly. Not cruel enough for anyone to call it cruel, just enough for me to hear what she thought of the word. "Neil, fiddle is sweet, but we have to be realistic. Private schools don't need another child with a vague hobby. They need focus." "Music can be focus." "Real music, yes." I looked at her. She smiled as if she had not just insulted my mother, my work, and my grandson's curiosity in 3 words. Dustin cleared his throat. "Maybe we can talk about this later." Later, the favorite hiding place of weak decisions. I set the brochure down. Benji walked into the kitchen then, holding one of the cereal boxes. He looked at me and smiled, a little uncertain. "Grandpa, did your mom really play music at dances?" "She did." "Was she good?" I opened my mouth. Marissa answered first. "I'm sure she was lovely for her time." For her time. Benji looked confused. I smiled at him because he was watching my face. "She made people dance when the snow was taller than the fence," I said. "That's good enough for me." He grinned. Only for a second. Then Marissa said, "All right, buddy, prep packet." And the grin went away. That was the rhythm of that house. A little memory would rise. Then Marissa would smooth it down. A little curiosity would open. Then she would close it in the name of the future. I thought Marissa only disliked the old case. I did not understand yet that she had already chosen a future for Benji, where everything from my side of the family had to disappear. I took the fiddle to Maple Bridge Strings on a gray Tuesday morning. The shop sat between a bakery and a used bookstore, with a faded green sign and a bell over the door that sounded softer than most bells. Inside, the air smelled like maple wood, rosin, dust, and old varnish. To some people, that smell means repair. To me, it means patience. Ada Mills was behind the counter, adjusting the bridge on a student violin, while a young apprentice sorted strings near the back wall. Ada was 64, sharp-eyed, and honest in the way only people who work with delicate things can be honest. She looked at the case before she looked at me. "Well," she said, "that case has lived a life." "So have I," she smiled. "Open it." I placed it on the counter and lifted the latch carefully. The old brass piece stuck halfway, same as it had for years. Ada watched my fingers instead of the case. "You're nervous," she said. "It was my mother's." That changed her face. Not dramatically, just enough. She stopped joking. When the case opened, the fiddle lay inside under torn lining and dust. The strings were dead. The bridge leaned like a tired man at a bus stop. The bow hair hung loose. The varnish had scratches along the lower bout, and one seam near the side had started to open. Ada leaned in. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she touched the edge of the instrument with 2 fingers. "This is not trash, Neil." I swallowed. "No?" "No, it is tired." I looked away toward the wall of hanging violins. That sentence did something to me. People had been calling old things worthless for so long, I had almost forgotten there were other words. Tired. Tired meant it had worked. Tired meant it had survived. Tired meant it deserved rest, not disposal. Ada carried the fiddle to her bench and turned on the small lamp. She checked the seams, the pegs, the bridge, the fingerboard, the soundpost, the bow. "This will not be cheap," she said. "I know." "Are you restoring it to display or to play?" "For my grandson." "Then to play?" "Yes." She nodded. That answer mattered. A wall piece can hide flaws. A student instrument has to forgive beginner hands and still hold tuning long enough for a child not to give up. Ada wrote down the work slowly. Bridge reset, peg replacement, seam repair, fingerboard cleaning, varnish touch-up, bow rehair, case lining, latch repair, student safe setup. Then she added 6 months of beginner lessons. I had asked about that before, quietly. I wanted Benji to have more than an instrument. I wanted him to have a place to begin. Ada looked over the estimate. Total comes to $2,300. I heard the number before I felt it. $2,300. That was not small money for me. Not in 2026, when groceries had a way of making a man check the receipt twice, and gas prices made every drive feel like a financial decision. I could have bought a cheaper student violin online. Plenty of people would have. New case, shiny finish, no history, no hard questions. But that was not what I wanted to give Benji. I wanted him to hold something that had already crossed a border, survived a life, and still had music left inside. "I'll pay it," I said. Ada studied me. "Neil, you sure?" "No." She smiled a little. "Honest answer. But I'm doing it." So I did, not all at once without feeling it. I sold a few repair tools I no longer used. I skipped a trip to see an old friend in Maine. I took 2 small repair jobs at a community center where the cellos were treated like furniture with strings. I did not resent any of it. Money spent on a child's music feels different from money spent on yourself. It hurts less, or maybe it hurts in a cleaner place. A few weeks later, Ada called me back. The fiddle was not perfect. Good. Perfect instruments scare children. But it was alive again. When Ada drew the bow across the strings, the first note came out thin, then warmed as if the wood was waking up and remembering who it used to be. I had to grip the counter. For a second, I was a boy again, watching my mother play while snow beat against the windows and people in heavy coats forgot how tired they were. Ada lowered the bow. "There she is," she said. I could not speak. She understood. People who repair instruments learn when silence is part of the sound. At the register, she printed the receipt. Full restoration, bow work, case repair, lesson deposit. Total, $2,300. Paid by Neil Carver. Then I asked her for one more thing. "Can you print a note on the receipt?" "What should it say?" I thought about it for a moment. Then I said, "For Benji. This fiddle carried our family voice across the border. Now it's yours." Ada typed it slowly. When she handed me the paper, I folded it once, then again, and tucked it under the repaired lining in the case. Ada raised an eyebrow. "You hiding the price?" "I'm hiding the money." "That sounds like the same thing." "It isn't." She waited. I touched the case. "I want him to see the story first, not the cost." Ada's face softened, but her voice stayed practical. "Neil, if Marissa sees only the case, she may miss the instrument." "I know." "Do you?" I wanted to say yes. But the truth was, I was still hoping love would be obvious if it was careful enough. Before I left, Ada tapped the case gently. "You always said old instruments deserved a second student. Maybe one day we'll build a little fund for that. Maybe this is the first one." I carried the case to my truck like it held something breakable. Because it did. Not just wood, not just strings, a chance. I hid the receipt because I wanted the gift to be about love, not money. Marissa used that silence to call love cheap. I thought the receipt would wait quietly until Benji was old enough to understand. I never imagined it would become the only thing loud enough to defend me. Benji's birthday party was held in a clubhouse Marissa had rented near the edge of Burlington. Not too fancy, just fancy enough to look carefully planned. White tablecloths, blue napkins. A cake with his name written in silver icing. A little display board with photos of him in tennis clothes, school uniform, and one picture of him holding a certificate from a weekend leadership workshop. There were parents there I barely knew, people from Marissa's private school circle, people who used words like enrichment, portfolio, development, and trajectory when talking about 12-year-olds. I came in carrying the fiddle case wrapped in brown paper, tied with a small strip of maple leaf ribbon. It looked old, even wrapped. Some things do. Age has a shape. Benji saw me first. His face brightened for half a second. That half second was enough to keep me walking. "Happy birthday, kiddo," I said. He looked at the package. "What is it?" I smiled. "Open it when the room gets quiet." That should have been enough. A private sentence between a grandfather and his grandson. But Marissa heard it from the gift table. "No, gifts go here," she said brightly. "We're opening everything together." Her voice was sweet. Her eyes were not. I hesitated. Benji looked from me to his mother. That little glance told me more than I wanted to know. He had already learned to check the weather before wanting something. So I placed the case on the table. Dustin stood near the drinks, talking to a father in a navy vest. He saw me. He gave a small wave. Tired. Careful. The wave of a son hoping his father would not bring anything complicated into a room his wife had arranged. I did not plan to. I had brought music. That was all. For a while, the party moved along like parties do. Children laughed too loudly. Adults pretended not to compare each other. Tara Wells walked around filming little clips on her phone, narrating the decorations like the cake had applied to college. "Marissa, this is gorgeous," she said. "You always make everything look so intentional." Marissa laughed. "I try. Childhood goes fast. You have to build the right memories." The right memories. I looked at the wrapped case on the gift table and wondered if old ones counted. When Benji began opening presents, he smiled the way polite children smile when they know adults are watching. Gift cards, wireless earbuds, a tennis bag, a prep seminar workbook Marissa called Fun Summer Brain Fuel. Then he reached my package. He touched the ribbon first. That gave me hope. Somewhere inside him, curiosity was still alive. He untied it slowly. The brown paper came away. The old violin case appeared. The room changed. Not loudly, just enough. A few parents looked at it, and then looked away. Tara lifted her eyebrows. Marissa's smile sharpened. "Well," she said, "that's certainly vintage." Benji ran his fingers over the scratched lid. "What is it?" I took one step forward. "It belonged to—" Marissa cut in with a laugh. "Your grandpa is cheap," she said. "He dug that junk out of a basement." The words landed before I could protect him from them. Benji's face flushed red. Tara covered her mouth, pretending she had not smiled. Someone near the cake gave an awkward little chuckle, the kind people make when they are not sure whether cruelty is a joke yet. I looked at my grandson. He was no longer touching the case with wonder. He was touching it like it might embarrass him. That was when anger rose in me. Not loud, hot, clean. I wanted to open the case right there. I wanted to pull out the receipt, the note, the restored fiddle, the lesson registration, and every bit of history Marissa had just spit on without knowing its name. I wanted to say, "That junk carried my mother's voice across a border before your polished words ever learned how to wound a child." But Benji was standing there with all those eyes on him, and a child's birthday should not become an adult's battlefield. So, I swallowed it. Dustin stepped forward a little. "Marissa, maybe not in front of everyone." Maybe. That was the word that told me he would not save me. Maybe not in front of everyone. Not, that was wrong. Not, Dad brought something meaningful. Not, Benji should open it. Just maybe. Marissa picked up the case by the handle like it might leave dust on her fingers. "Sweetheart, we'll look at it later," she told Benji. "Right now, let's keep going." Benji nodded. Too fast. Children learn embarrassment quickly when adults teach it in public. The party moved on. The case did not. It sat beside the gift table like an unwanted guest. I watched Benji glance at it twice. Marissa noticed, too. Each time, she redirected him. Come take a picture with Tara. Show everyone your tennis bag. Tell Ms. Wells about the prep workshop. By the time the cake was cut, the old case might as well have been invisible, except to me. Before I tell you what Benji found inside that violin case, let me ask you something. If someone called your gift trash in front of your grandchild, would you explain the truth right there? Or stay quiet to protect the child's birthday? Tell me in the comments, because many grandparents know how painful it is when love gets judged by how new it looks. After the guests began leaving, I helped carry paper plates to the trash, because old habits are hard to kill. If there is a mess in a room, men like me start stacking things. I stepped near the hallway that led to the garage and stopped. The case was there, not on the gift table anymore, not near Benji's things. It sat in a donation pile beside a box of old party decorations, broken toys, and shoes he had outgrown. Brown paper still clung to one corner. The maple ribbon had fallen on the floor. For a moment, I could not move. Then I heard Tara's voice from the kitchen. Honestly, Marissa, you handled that well. Some grandparents just don't understand image. Marissa answered softly, but I heard every word. If I let Neil start filling his head with old family stuff, Benji will never learn to move forward. There it was. Not the gift. The direction. She was not just embarrassed by the case. She was afraid of what it carried. I looked toward the living room. Benji was standing near the window, holding the tennis bag with both hands, not smiling now. I wondered if he had heard. I hoped he had not. That hope hurt because it meant I was still protecting Marissa's version of the room. I walked to the donation pile and rested my hand on the case. Old wood under old leather. My mother's silence inside it. My wife's dream folded somewhere behind it. My grandson's future being sorted like clutter. Dustin came up behind me. Dad, he said quietly, please don't make this a thing tonight. I looked at him. It already is a thing. He lowered his voice. Benji had a good day. Don't ruin it. A good day. I looked at the case in the donation pile. Then at my son, who still thought peace meant leaving the hardest sentence unsaid. I took my hand off the handle. Not because he was right, because Benji was watching from the window now, and I would not make him choose between his birthday and the truth. Not yet. I left the clubhouse with my coat over my arm and my hands empty. Behind me, in a donation box beside the garage, sat the one bridge I had left between my mother's voice and my grandson's future. That night, Marissa did not just throw away a violin case. She threw away the only bridge I had left between my mother's voice and my grandson's future. I drove home after that birthday party with both hands tight on the steering wheel. The road out of the clubhouse was quiet, lined with trimmed bushes and clean little signs that made the whole neighborhood look more organized than it probably was inside. That is the thing about polished places. They can hide ugly moments very well. I kept seeing the case in that donation pile. My mother's fiddle, the repaired latch, the fresh lining, the bow Ada Mills had rehaired by hand, the note tucked inside because I had wanted Benji to find the story before he found the price. And there it was, sitting beside broken toys and party trash because my daughter-in-law decided anything old from me could not possibly be worth keeping. When I got home, I did not turn on the television. I did not make coffee. I went straight to the small table by the window where Renee used to sort library donations. She would bring home boxes of books people no longer wanted and say, "Most things are thrown away by people who never learned how to read them." I thought about that for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. Dustin. Dad, please don't be upset. Marissa didn't mean it the way it sounded. I stared at the message. That was my son's gift. He could wrap an insult in enough padding that he almost believed nobody had been hurt. I typed back. She called my mother's fiddle trash. Then I deleted it. I typed, "You let her humiliate me in front of Benji." Deleted that too. Finally, I put the phone down. There are some conversations a man should not have while his hands are still shaking. The next morning, I drove back to Dustin's house. Not angry, not exactly. There is a place past anger where everything becomes very quiet. That was where I was. I told myself I only wanted to make sure the case had not been hauled away. The donation box was still beside the garage, same corner, same pile. Old shoes, plastic decorations, a cracked storage bin, and the violin case, half hidden under a folded tablecloth with frosting on the edge. I lifted it out carefully. Dust stuck to the brown paper still clinging near the handle. The maple ribbon was gone. I ran my thumb over the latch. Still there, still holding. That was when Marissa opened the side door. She had a coffee mug in one hand and her phone in the other. For 1 second, she looked surprised. Then she became calm in that practiced way of hers. "Neil," she said, "please don't make this dramatic." I looked at her. "You threw away my gift." I moved it out of the party area. To the donation box. It didn't belong in Benji's room. You didn't let him decide that. Her jaw tightened. He is 12. He doesn't always know what is good for him. "No," I said, "but he knows when adults are ashamed for him." That landed. I saw it. Not guilt, annoyance. Marissa stepped down into the garage and lowered her voice. "I'm trying to keep him focused. You keep pulling him backward." "Backward?" "Yes. Old stories. Old music. Old family things. He needs direction. That instrument belonged to his great-grandmother." She glanced at the case like the family history inside it was an inconvenience. "A scratched-up violin case is not a future," she said. "It's a reminder of everything we're trying to rise above." There it was again. Rise above. As if people like my mother were something underneath her. I felt my temper come up so fast, it scared me. "My mother crossed a border with less than what you spend on one weekend seminar," I said. "She cleaned motel rooms in the morning and played music at night so her child would not grow up believing poor meant empty." Marissa's face changed. For the first time, I think she realized I was not going to make myself small for her comfort. Then Dustin came through the door behind her. "Dad," he said quickly, "come on." I looked at him. "Come on what?" "Not here." "Where would you like me to defend my mother, Dustin? Somewhere more convenient?" He flinched. "Good. Sometimes a son needs to hear his father's anger before he remembers the man is still alive." Marissa folded her arms. "Benji has a prep seminar coming up. He does not need confusion right now." That was when I saw the brochure on the counter behind her. Elite Summer Admissions Prep. Interview Coaching. Leadership Profile. Personal Essay Workshop. 4 weekends. The dates were circled in blue. One of those weekends matched the beginner lesson schedule Ada and I had arranged. I looked from the brochure to Marissa. "You already planned over the lessons." She blinked. Only once, but enough. Dustin turned toward her. "What lessons?" Marissa answered too quickly. "Neil mentioned something. Nothing was finalized." "It was finalized," I said. 6 months. Dustin stared at me. "You paid for lessons?" "For Benji." Marissa laughed once, short, sharp. "You cannot just buy your way into my son's schedule." There it was. My son. Not our family. Not your grandson. My son. I held the case by the handle. I bought him a chance. "You bought yourself influence." That one hurt, because it was exactly the kind of sentence that could make a loving act look dirty if spoken with enough confidence. Dustin rubbed his forehead. "Dad, maybe we all need to slow down." I looked at him and almost felt sorry for him. A man can spend his life managing grocery routes, delivery delays, and truck schedules, and still not know what to do when his own family is standing in front of him broken. "Your wife threw away your grandmother's fiddle, I said. There is nothing fast about that. Benji appeared at the hallway entrance, still in pajama pants, hair messy, eyes moving from the case to his mother to me. The whole garage changed when he stepped into it. That is what children do. They turn adult anger into something dangerous. I lowered my voice. Hey, buddy! He did not answer right away. His eyes stayed on the case. Marissa stepped between us slightly. Benji, go inside. Grandpa is upset. Grandpa is upset. Not Mom threw away your gift. Not there is something you deserve to know. Just Grandpa is upset. I looked at Benji and saw confusion settle over his face like fog. So, I did the hardest thing. I let go of the handle. The case stayed in the donation box, not because Marissa had won, because Benji was watching, and I refused to make him feel responsible for catching the truth between grown people. Before I left, I said to him, softly enough that Marissa could not turn it into a speech. Old wood keeps sound longer than people keep promises. Benji looked at me. He did not understand. Not yet. But I saw the sentence land somewhere. Maybe not in his mind. Maybe deeper. I drove away with nothing in my hands again. But this time, I carried something worse than emptiness. I carried the knowledge that Marissa was not throwing away a gift because it looked old. She was replacing an inheritance with a resume. When I saw that prep seminar brochure beside the donation box, I understood Marissa was not throwing away a gift. She was clearing space for the future she had already chosen. I did not sleep much that night. At 62, sleep becomes a guest that visits when it wants and leaves when the heart starts making noise. Mine was loud. I kept seeing that donation box beside the garage, the fiddle case half buried under party trash. Marissa's face when she said it did not belong in Benji's room. Dustin looking at the floor. And Benji standing in the hallway, too young to understand the whole argument, but old enough to feel that something important had been made ugly. By morning, I called Ada Mills at Maple Bridge Strings. She answered with the bell of the shop in the background and a violin note squeaking somewhere nearby. Maple Bridge Strings. Ada, it's Neil. Her voice changed. Neil, I was about to call you. That sentence made me sit up straighter. Why? A pause. Not long. Long enough. I received an email late last night. From Marissa? Yes. I closed my eyes. Of course. Some people throw away the visible thing first. Then they go looking for the roots. What did she want? Ada did not answer right away. I heard paper moving on her end, then her chair creaking. She asked whether the 6-month lesson deposit could be canceled. I said nothing. Ada continued, carefully. She also asked if the credit could be redirected to another educational enrichment program. Her words, not mine. I looked at the empty corner of my kitchen where Renee used to keep a basket of sheet music for the choir. Educational enrichment. A clean phrase. Too clean. What else did she say? Ada hesitated. Neil, read it. Another silence. Then Ada read, Given that the violin restoration was a sentimental purchase made without parental alignment, we do not believe Benji will be pursuing folk-style distractions at this time. Folk-style distractions. There are insults that come wearing gloves. That one did. I did not yell. I did not even move. But something inside me went cold in a way anger never quite manages. Ada spoke softly. I did not process anything. Why not? Because the lessons are registered under Benji's name. You said it that way. I remembered that day, standing at Ada's counter, signing the lesson paperwork after the repair invoice. I had asked if the deposit could be tied to Benji directly, not to me, not to Dustin, not to Marissa. Ada had raised an eyebrow then. Expecting trouble? No, I told her. Expecting adulthood. She had laughed. I had not. I had seen too many children lose music because an adult decided the cost looked foolish on paper. A cracked bow was not worth fixing. A rental fee was too much for a hobby. A beginner's first lesson was canceled because someone wanted the child to pick something cleaner, louder, or easier to brag about. So I made the deposit non-refundable, transferable only to Benji, no cash refund to a parent. Schedule changes required notice to the donor and the student's guardian. At the time, it felt careful. That morning, it felt like the only smart thing I had done. Ada said, "She cannot move the money to a seminar. She cannot turn it into cash. She cannot convert it into anything else." I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. "She can throw away a case," I said. "She does not get to throw away his chance." Ada was quiet. Then she said, "That is exactly why I called." I stood and walked to the window. The street outside was wet from overnight rain. A delivery truck rolled past slowly. Somewhere across the road, a dog barked at nothing. Normal life. That always feels strange when your family is coming apart. "What seminar?" I asked. She attached a brochure. "Elite summer admissions prep?" "Yes." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the world had become so polished that people could call a child's inheritance a distraction and a weekend of coached answers a future. "Neil," Ada said, "I need to ask you something." "All right." "Did Benji know the lessons were part of the gift?" "No." "Did he know the fiddle belonged to your mother?" "Not fully." "Why not?" That question was not judgmental. It was practical. Ada worked with wood. She knew if pressure went into the wrong place, something split. I looked at my hands. Old hands. Hands that had fixed things for other people's children for most of my life. I wanted him to open the story before he saw the price. Ada sighed. "That is a beautiful idea. But Marissa got to the story first." There it was, plain, accurate, painful. I leaned my forehead against the cool window glass. "I know." Ada lowered her voice. "There is something else in the case." "The recording?" "Yes. The USB transfer is still tucked under the document flap. Mara Carver, North Shore Hall, 1974. Hearing my mother's name like that made the room shift. Mara Carver. Not grandma, not an old story. A name on a piece of sound that still existed because Ada had helped me transfer a brittle cassette before it gave up completely. "Is it safe?" "It should be, unless someone throws the case away before it is opened." I closed my eyes. The donation box. The garage. Marissa's hands on the handle. Benji in the hallway. "I should go get it." "You should," Ada said. But neither of us moved through the phone, because we both knew the harder truth. If I stormed into that house and took the case, Marissa would make it about control. She would tell Benji I was dramatic, possessive, emotional, trying to buy affection. She had already started that story, and stories, once started, do not need much evidence to keep walking. I said, if I take it back, he may never open it. Ada understood. "You are waiting for him to want it." "I am waiting for him to not be afraid of wanting it." That sentence hurt more than I expected. Ada did not answer for a while. Then she said, "Neil, children can survive disappointment. What hurts them is being taught to be ashamed of love." I wrote that down after we hung up, not because I needed to remember it, because I was afraid I would forget it when the next cruel thing happened. After the call, Ada forwarded me Marissa's email. I printed it. "Sentimental purchase without parental alignment. Folk-style distractions. Redirect credit. Alternative enrichment." Every phrase sounded professional enough to hide what it was really doing. Even badly tuned violins make more honest noise than that email. I placed the email beside the repair invoice, the lesson registration, and the receipt copy Ada had sent me. For the first time, I saw the whole shape of it. Marissa had not rejected a gift. She had rejected a line of inheritance. She had rejected my mother's music, my work, Renee's dream, Benji's curiosity, and any version of the boy that did not fit her clean little admissions story. Then Dustin called. I almost did not answer. But a father keeps answering longer than he should. "Dad," he said, "Marissa told me you paid for lessons." "Yes." "You should have talked to us first." "I talked to Benji first. He asked about learning. He's 12. He's old enough to know what sound he likes." Dustin exhaled hard. "That's not the point." "What is the point?" "The point is, you cannot make decisions around Marissa. I made a decision for my grandson. You made a decision that affects our schedule." There it was. Schedule. Not music, not heritage. Not the look on Benji's face when the case was called junk. A schedule. I said, "Your wife tried to cancel the lessons and move the money. She was trying to keep things practical. She was trying to take his name off a chance I paid for." "Dad, come on." "No, Dustin, you come on." He went quiet. My voice was not loud, but it was harder than usual. "I have watched you call peace the absence of argument for too long. Peace is not your wife insulting your father while your son learns to be ashamed of where he comes from. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it is closer to true than anything your house has said lately." He said nothing, so I continued. "The lessons stay. The deposit is Benji's, not mine, not Marissa's, not yours to trade for a brochure." "Dad, no, not this time." The silence after that was new. I think Dustin finally heard something he had been avoiding. Not the fiddle. Not the money. The boundary. Before we ended the call, he said, quieter, "I didn't know she emailed Ada." "I believe you." "I didn't know she called it a distraction." "I believe that too." He sounded tired when he said, "I don't know how everything got so complicated." I looked at Marissa's email on the table. It got complicated when people started calling control a future. After we hung up, I sat alone with the papers. Receipt, registration, email, recording label. A whole little stack of proof that a gift was never only a gift. It was a door. Marissa had tried to close it before Benji touched the handle. That was when I realized Marissa had not only tried to silence an old violin, she had tried to silence the first lesson my grandson was supposed to receive from it. The next afternoon, I went back to Dustin's house for a reason so small it almost felt like an excuse. I had left my old wool cap in the entryway. That was what I told myself. A cap. A cheap gray thing I could have replaced at any store in Burlington. But old men lie to themselves too. We just do it more quietly. The truth was, I wanted to see if the case was still there. I parked by the curb and sat in the truck for a minute, watching the house. Marissa's car was in the driveway. Dustin's was gone. A basketball lay near the porch steps, half flat and wet from the morning rain. Normal things, family things, the kind that make pain feel almost unreasonable. I walked up slowly. Before I reached the door, I heard Benji's voice from the side yard. He was sitting on the back porch steps with his phone in one hand and the violin case beside him. The donation box had been dragged closer to the garage, but the case was out now, resting against his knee. For one foolish second, hope moved in my chest. Then I heard what he said. "Yeah, it's the thing Grandpa brought." A pause. He was talking to a friend. "No, it's not new. It's old." Another pause. Then he gave a small laugh. Not mean, uncertain. The kind of laugh children use when they are trying to belong to someone else's opinion. "Mom says Grandpa gives old junk because he's cheap." I stopped where I was. The porch light above me clicked in the wind. Benji looked down at the case and nudged it with his sneaker. "Maybe she's right," he said. "It does smell like a basement." That was the moment I hit bottom. Not when Marissa laughed, not when Tara smiled, not when Dustin asked me to stay quiet. This was worse. I had prepared myself for Marissa to misunderstand the gift. I had not prepared myself to hear her voice coming out of my grandson's mouth. Benji looked up and saw me. His face changed fast. Guilt. Surprise. Then that guarded expression children wear when they realize an adult has heard something they cannot take back. "Grandpa," he said. At least it was Grandpa. That should have comforted me. It did not. I walked toward him and kept my voice gentle. "Hey, buddy." He ended the call without saying goodbye. The case sat between us like a third person neither of us knew how to speak to. "I came for my cap," I said. "Oh." He looked toward the door. "I think Mom put it by the bench." "Probably." Neither of us moved. He glanced at the case. "I didn't mean, you don't have to explain." But he did. Children always try to patch the hole adults made. Mom just said you find stuff and make it seem important. I nodded slowly. That sounds like something she might say. He looked at me, unsure if that was safe. I wanted to tell him everything. The receipt, the lessons, Ada Mills, the old recording, Mara Carver playing in a room full of snow boots and tired workers. I wanted to open the case and put the truth right in his hands. But Benji was still standing inside his mother's house, inside his mother's rules, inside a story she had already polished for him. So I chose one sentence. Sometimes old things smell like where they survived. He blinked. What does that mean? It means something can look worn because it made it through newer things never faced. He looked down at the case again. His fingers touched the scratched leather. For a second, I thought he might open it. Then Marissa's voice came from inside. "Benji? Who are you talking to?" His hand pulled back. That small movement hurt almost as much as the words had. I stepped away before she reached the door. "Go on," I said. "I'll grab my cap." He picked up the case awkwardly, like he was not sure whether to carry it or hide it. Marissa appeared in the doorway, phone pressed against her chest. Her eyes moved from me to Benji, then to the case. "Neil," she said, "you're back." "For my cap." "It's inside." "I know." She looked at Benji. "Put that back with the donation things, sweetheart. We already talked about it." Benji hesitated. Only a second. But I saw it. Marissa saw it too. Her voice softened. "Too much. You don't need to feel bad. Grandpa understands." No, I thought. Grandpa does not understand. Grandpa is learning. There is a difference. Benji lowered the case toward the box. I could feel my temper reaching for my throat. Not at him. Never at him. At the room that had taught him to apologize for curiosity. I wanted to say, "Open it." Just that. Open it. But I remembered Ada's voice. Children can survive disappointment. What hurts them is being taught to be ashamed of love. If I forced the moment, Marissa would make the case a battlefield. So I said nothing. I walked inside, took my cap from the bench, and left without coffee, without small talk, without pretending the house felt welcoming. Dustin's house had never looked colder. As I stepped off the porch, Benji was still near the donation box. Marissa had gone back inside. He stood there alone, one hand resting on the case handle. I kept walking. Every step felt wrong. By the time I reached my truck, I had almost convinced myself to let it go. Maybe not forever, just for now. Maybe Benji needed to grow older before the story could reach him. Maybe I had already lost this round. Maybe an old fiddle, an old receipt, and an old grandfather were too much weight for a 12-year-old boy to carry. I opened the truck door. Then I heard the smallest sound behind me. A latch. Old brass, sticking halfway, then giving. I did not turn around, not yet. Some truths need privacy before they become courage. I got into the truck and sat there, staring through the windshield. In the side mirror, I saw Benji crouched beside the donation box. He had pulled the case back out. The lid was open. His shoulders were hunched, his head bent close, his hands moving carefully along the torn lining. For the first time since the party, he was not looking embarrassed. He was looking curious. That was how it started. Not with an argument, not with my anger, not with Marissa losing control in front of everyone. Just a boy deciding to look inside something he had been told was worthless. I did not know exactly what he saw first. The folded receipt, my name, the $2,300 total, the lesson registration, the note. But I saw the moment his body went still. The kind of stillness that means a child has found a fact bigger than the story he was handed. I sat in that truck with my hand on the key, afraid to breathe too loudly. I was halfway down the driveway when Benji pulled the case back from the donation box, lifted the torn lining, and found the paper Marissa thought old wood would keep hidden. Benji told me later that he almost closed the case. That matters. Because a child does not always run toward the truth when he finds it. Sometimes he touches it, feels how sharp it is, and wants to put the lid back down before everything changes. He was crouched beside the donation box, with the old fiddle case open in front of him. The torn lining had lifted at one corner. Under it was the folded receipt. At first, he thought it was just paper someone had forgotten. Then, he saw his name. Benji Carver, then mine. Neil Carver, then the number. $2,300. He read it once, then again. Maple Bridge Strings. Full student violin restoration. Bow rehair. Case lining and latch repair. 6-month beginner lesson deposit. Paid by Neil Carver. Benji said his hands went cold. Not because of the money. Money is strange to children. They know when something is expensive, but they do not always understand sacrifice until much later. What stopped him was the note printed at the bottom. For Benji. This fiddle carried our family voice across the border. Now it's yours. He sat there beside the garage with the donation box open behind him and the case in his lap. For a few minutes, no one came outside. That was the mercy. Truth sometimes needs a quiet room before it can stand up. Benji lifted the fiddle out carefully. He had never held it before. Not really. The varnish was warm brown, scratched in places, but smooth where Ada Mills had cleaned it. The bridge stood straight now. The strings were new. The bow rested in its slot like it had been waiting for permission to matter again. Beside the receipt was a small photo. A boy who looked a little like me stood beside a woman in a wool coat. She held a fiddle under her arm. Snow was piled behind them against a wooden hall. On the back, in my handwriting, I had written, Mara Carver. North Shore Hall, Nova Scotia, 1974. Benji stared at that name. Mara. He had heard it before, but only in pieces. Family stories that floated past dinner conversations and disappeared when Marissa redirected the room. Under the photo was a small square of tartan cloth, folded neatly. Then a USB drive with a label Ada had made. Mara Carver, North Shore Hall, 1974. Benji did not play it right away. First, he called Maple Bridge Strings. I did not know that until later. Ada told me he sounded small on the phone, not scared, careful, like he was walking on a floor that might break. Is this Maple Bridge Strings? He asked. Yes, Ada said. This is Ada. My name is Benji Carver. Ada went quiet, then softer. Hello, Benji. I found a receipt. I thought you might. He swallowed hard. Did my grandpa really pay all this? Yes, sweetheart. Why? Ada did not answer like a saleswoman. She answered like someone who knew old wood can hold grief. Because he wanted you to have more than an instrument. He wanted you to have a beginning. Benji looked at the case. My mom said it was junk. Ada was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Your grandfather did not bring trash. He restored a voice. That sentence stayed with Benji. I know because he repeated it to me later, word for word, like a child holding a match in a dark room. Ada explained only what she had the right to explain. She told him the restoration was real. The lessons were real. The deposit was in his name. and the recording belonged to his great-grandmother, Mara, who had played that fiddle long before any of us had learned how much family could hurt. Benji asked, "Can my mom cancel the lessons?" Ada paused. "No, not without proper notice, and not without your name staying attached to them." "My name?" "Yes, your grandfather set it up that way." "Why?" Ada said, "Maybe because he knew chances can disappear if they are not protected." After the call, Benji took the case to his room. He closed the door. That part broke my heart when I heard it. A child should not have to hide to learn where he comes from. He plugged the USB into his laptop. The recording crackled first. Old sound, thin air, a few voices in the background, someone laughing, a chair scraping. Then the fiddle began. Not perfect, no studio polish. Just a warm, living sound that seemed to step out of another decade wearing snow on its boots. Mara's bow moved through the tune like she was telling a story without asking anyone's permission to listen. Benji sat on the edge of his bed with the old case open beside him. And for the first time, the thing Marissa had called basement junk became something else. A room, a boarder, a woman he had never met, a grandfather who had not been cheap, a family voice that had almost been donated away before he ever heard it. He played the recording 3 times. Then he opened the lesson registration. Beneficiary, Benji Carver. 6-month beginner instruction. Donor, Neil Carver. Non-transferable to parent account. No cash conversion. No unrelated enrichment credit. Benji did not understand every legal phrase, but he understood enough. This had been meant for him, protected for him, not pushed on him, not thrown at him to make me look good. Given carefully. He found the brochure for the prep seminar on his desk after that. Marissa must have left it there for him to review. Personal presentation, interview coaching, future leadership. He looked from that glossy brochure to the scratched old case. One looked expensive. The other had cost more than anyone in the room had admitted. That was the first time Benji began to understand that price and value are not the same thing. Later that evening, Dustin knocked on his door. "Benji?" No answer. "Buddy, you okay?" Benji opened the door holding the receipt. Dustin saw it. His face changed. Not because he was surprised the receipt existed, because he finally understood his son had seen it. Benji asked, "Did you know?" Dustin rubbed his mouth with one hand. "I knew your grandpa helped. How much did you know?" That question made Dustin look older. "I didn't know all of it." "Did Mom know?" Dustin looked toward the hallway. That was answer enough. Benji folded the receipt slowly. "She called it trash." "I know." "She said Grandpa was cheap." "I know." "Why didn't you say anything?" Dustin had no clean answer, so he gave the only true one he had. "I was trying to keep peace." Benji looked down at the fiddle case. "That wasn't peace." "No, it was not." Sometimes children say the sentence adults spend years avoiding. Dustin sat beside him on the bed. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Benji played the recording for him. Mara's fiddle filled the room again. Dustin lowered his head. Maybe he remembered hearing that sound when he was a boy. Maybe he remembered me. Maybe he remembered his grandmother before he learned to be embarrassed by anything old. I do not know. But when the recording ended, Dustin said, "That was your great-grandmother." Benji nodded, and Mom was going to throw it away. Dustin closed his eyes. Yes. That was not enough, but it was honest. Honest is a beginning, even when it arrives late. Benji placed the receipt inside the case again, but not under the lining. This time, he put it on top. Visible, where no one could pretend it was not there. Then he picked up the old bow. He did not know how to hold it right. Not yet. But he held it like it mattered. By the time the old recording ended, Benji was no longer holding a basement gift. He was holding a voice his mother had tried to throw away before he ever heard it. The music showcase was held the following Thursday. Marissa had treated it like a small admissions event. Not officially, of course. Officially, it was just an enrichment night at the private arts center where Benji sometimes took weekend classes. Parents wandered between rooms, students played short pieces, teachers shook hands, and people pretended they were not measuring each other's children. But Marissa had invited Paula Denton. Paula worked as an arts admissions coordinator for one of the private schools Marissa admired. She had kind eyes, expensive shoes, and the calm expression of a woman who had listened to too many parents describe their children like investment portfolios. Tara Wells was there too. Of course she was. Phone in hand, smile ready. Dustin stood near the refreshment table looking as if he had not slept well. I sat in the back row. That had become a habit with me. Back rows are good places for men who do not want to interrupt the life they came to support. I did not know what Benji planned. No one told me. All I knew was that he had found the receipt, heard the recording, and stopped answering Marissa's questions with his old, easy nods. That alone had changed the air in their house. Marissa was polished that night. Cream jacket, gold earrings, soft voice. The kind of mother people noticed because she looked like she had never once forgotten a permission slip or lost her temper in a parking lot. She stood near Paula, speaking lightly. "We're trying to be very intentional with Benji," she said. "No random hobbies. Everything has to build discipline, culture, and presentation." Tara nodded. "Marissa is so good about that. She doesn't let clutter or old family pressure distract him." Old family pressure. I looked at my hands. They were hands that had held cracked violins, school trumpets with dents in them, and my mother's fiddle the day I thought I was giving my grandson a gift. Pressure, maybe, but not the kind Tara meant. Nora Finch, Benji's music teacher, stood near the doorway with a folder under one arm. Ada Mills was there too, representing Maple Bridge Strings. She had brought 2 repaired student instruments for display, each tagged with a small card explaining the work done. Ada saw me and gave a small nod. Not pity. Recognition. That helped. A little. Then Benji walked in. He carried the old violin case. The room did not stop at first. Only Marissa did. Her face changed so quickly, most people would have missed it. I did not. A man learns to read storms when he has lived under polite weather long enough. She stepped toward him, voice low. "Benji, where did you get that?" He held the case with both hands. "From the donation box." "That was not yours to bring here." "It has my name inside." Marissa's smile returned, but now it had work to do. "Honey, not in front of everyone." Benji looked around. For a moment, I thought he might fold. He was 12. The room was full of adults. His mother was polished, controlled, and afraid in a way only a child could sense. Then he looked at me. Not for permission, for steadiness. I gave him the only thing I could. I stayed still. He opened the case on the small table near the front. The repaired fiddle lay inside under the lights. No shine, no drama, just wood, strings, and history. Benji took out the folded receipt. "Mom," he said, and his voice trembled just enough to remind everyone he was still a child. "If Grandpa brought trash, why does this say he paid $2,300 to restore it for me?" The room went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet that listens. Marissa's face lost color. Not all at once. Slowly. Like the blood had to think about leaving. Tara lowered her phone. Dustin closed his eyes. Paula Denton looked from Benji to Marissa, then to the case. Marissa reached for the paper. "Benji, give me that." He stepped back. Small step, big meaning. "No." That word did more than any shouting could have done. Marissa whispered, "You do not understand what this is." Benji unfolded the receipt and read the note. "For Benji. This fiddle carried our family voice across the border. Now it's yours." He looked about us here. You said it was basement junk. Marissa's lips parted. Nothing came out. Then Ada Mills stepped forward. Calm, professional, merciful, but not soft. I prepared that receipt, she said. Neil Carver paid for a full student restoration, bow rehair, case repair, and 6 months of lessons. That instrument is not trash. Nora Finch added, Benji has a good ear. This is a suitable starter instrument, especially because it already means something to him. Paula Denton looked at the fiddle, then at Benji. May I ask why you brought it tonight? Benji looked down at the case. Then he said, Because everyone keeps saying my future, but Grandpa gave me something from where I come from. That sentence moved through the room quietly. Even Tara had no quick comment for it. Paula nodded slowly. A child who understands heritage can speak about himself better than a child trained only to look impressive. Marissa flinched. That was the moment she understood she had not only failed to protect her image, she had damaged it in front of the very person she had wanted to impress. Dustin finally stepped beside Benji. Late, but there. Marissa, he said, voice rough. Enough. He gets to know where he comes from. She looked at him as if he had slapped her. Maybe truth feels like violence when control has been mistaken for love. I stood then, not to perform, not to win, only because my grandson was standing in a room full of adults holding a piece of paper too heavy for 12-year-old hands. I walked to the front slowly. Every step felt like crossing years I had stayed quiet to keep peace. When I reached Benji, I did not touch the receipt. I did not touch the case. I only stood beside him. Old things do not embarrass a child, I said. Adults teach children to be ashamed of them. No one argued. Marissa's eyes filled. For the first time all night, she did not look polished. She looked scared. I was trying to protect his future, she said. Her voice cracked on future. I believed she meant it. That was the hardest part. Marissa was not lying about wanting Benji to succeed. She was lying to herself about what success required throwing away. I looked at her. A future that needs a child to be ashamed of his family is not protection. Benji glanced at me, then at her. He did not run to me. He did not run from her. Guru. That is how real family pain looks. Not clean, not satisfying, just honest enough to hurt everyone. Ada closed the case gently, leaving the receipt on top where it could be seen. Nora spoke to Paula about the lesson plan. Dustin asked Benji if he wanted to stay or leave. Benji said he wanted to stay. Marissa stood very still. Tara stepped back toward the refreshment table and finally put her phone away. Good. Some moments do not deserve an audience forever. Before the night ended, Paula Denton shook Benji's hand and said, When you are ready, I would like to hear what that instrument sounds like. Benji looked terrified, then proud, then both. He whispered, I'm just starting. Paula smiled. That is where most honest things begin. I carried nothing out that night. Benji carried the case. That mattered. He did not carry it like something embarrassing. He carried it like something he had chosen. Marissa walked behind him, quiet for once. That night, Marissa did not lose her son, but she lost the right to decide which parts of his family were allowed to matter. 3 months later, Benji could play 4 clean notes, only 4. But those 4 notes meant more to me than any polished recital ever could. He sat in the back room of maple bridge strings with the old fiddle under his chin, his shoulders too stiff, his bow hand nervous, and his face serious enough to make Ada Mills hide a smile behind her coffee cup. The first note squeaked. The second one wobbled. The third almost ran away. The fourth held. Benji looked at me. Was that bad? I smiled. That note sounded Canadian, polite, but deeply confused. He laughed, a real laugh. That was when I knew something had survived. Not everything healed quickly after that music night. Families do not repair like instruments. You cannot tighten one peg, replace one string, and expect the whole thing to hold tune again. Marissa still came to Benji's lessons sometimes. She sat quietly now, no phone in her hand, no comments about image, no speeches about future-facing activities. That did not mean she had changed completely. People rarely change in one dramatic scene, but she had lost something permanent that night. Control. From then on, Benji's lessons stayed in his name. Dustin and I were copied on every schedule change. Ada kept all records at Maple Bridge Strings. Any family gift from me went directly to Benji or stayed at my house until he was ready for it. Marissa could still be his mother. She could love him. She could guide him. She could apologize. But she could no longer throw away a gift, cancel a lesson, hide a receipt, or decide which part of his family history deserved to exist. That door was closed, permanently. Dustin apologized to me one evening in my kitchen, not perfectly, but honestly. He stood by the sink, staring at a mug Renee used to love, and said, "Dad, I thought staying neutral was keeping peace." I told him, "Neutral is not peace when someone is erasing another person." He nodded. For the first time in a long time, he did not defend himself. That mattered. Marissa and I spoke once in family counseling. She looked tired in a way makeup could not cover. "I thought I was protecting his future," she said. I believed her. That was the bitter part. Marissa had not wanted Benji to fail. She had wanted him polished, safe, impressive, impossible to dismiss. But somewhere along the way, she decided anything old, working class, handmade, or inherited was a threat. I told her, a future built by throwing away where a child comes from is not protection. It is amputation. She cried then. I did not rush to comfort her. Some tears need to sit with the damage that made them. Benji still loved his mother. Of course he did. A child does not stop loving a parent because the truth hurts. He simply learns that love and trust are not the same thing. He kept the $2,300 receipt inside the case, not hidden, visible. One day I asked him why. He said, "If someone calls something worthless before looking inside, I want to remember to look inside." That one stayed with me. So did the fiddle. Mara's old recording became part of Benji's practice routine. Sometimes he played it before trying a new tune. Sometimes he just listened. I think he liked knowing that a woman he never met had once made a room full of tired people tap their boots while snow pressed against the windows. I liked knowing it too. With Ada and Nora Finch, we finally started the Maple Bridge Instrument Fund. Nothing grand. A few repaired violins, a couple of bows, case repairs, strings. Small lesson scholarships for kids whose families could not afford one more bill. The first donated instrument was a scratched student violin with a cracked bridge. Ada held it up and said, "Looks tired." I said, "Good. Tired things already know how to survive." Benji smiled at that. So did I. Because that was the lesson buried under all of it. Old does not mean worthless. Quiet does not mean weak. Cheap-looking does not mean cheap. And love should never be judged by how new it looks. Marissa threw out my gift because it looked old. My grandson opened it because something in him still wondered. And sometimes, that is all truth needs. One child curious enough to look inside what an adult called trash. Thank you for watching and sharing this time with me today. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. If this story moved you even a little, please consider subscribing to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube believes you may enjoy it, so take care of yourself. Drink some water if it is late, and enjoy the next one.